Hello, this is Steve, your YouTube English teacher, focusing on Cambridge exams. And today we have some listening from the C1 exam, or also relevant for C2. As you know, part 4, 10 marks, by far the most important part of the listening. 2 tasks at once. The first task is often factual information, such as what job they do, or you'll see in the examples we do today, what news they are receiving, something slightly more factual. And the second part, something slightly more opinionated, as in how they are feeling, which is something that can come up on several exams and is a really useful function in understanding for other parts of listening as well, understanding people's feelings, understanding their emotions. And it's something we can practice, which is what we're going to do today. So here is a task that we might have in C1 part 4. As we can see, 5 different speakers, speaker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the first question is why they fell asleep in public. Something we've all done. You're imagining the situation. You're on a train, you fall asleep. You fell asleep in public. Maybe you are at a party and you fell asleep. Well, you're still sort of in public, I guess, depending on the party. And the second part, how did they feel afterwards? And we can see embarrassed, aware, offended, pleased, worried. All common feelings that human beings have, I am told. And of course, yes, we all know that. What we're going to do to practice today is to think about, as we've said in previous videos, what are you expecting to hear that tells you they are feeling embarrassed, aware, offended, pleased, worried, and so on. And we can practice this, can't we? We can think, okay, if you're embarrassed, what expression might you use to express that you're embarrassed? What idioms, what sayings, what situation, what context, and so on. So this is your first activity. Pause the video and think of all of these adjectives describing how people are feeling. Do you know any expressions that would indicate that that's the answer, the kind of thing they might say? Try and write down one for each one. If you want, what I'll do in class is I will ask students if they want to use AI for this, use ChatGPT for this, use ChatGPT and say expressions, idioms, phrases that indicate someone is embarrassed in English. And then, with a little bit of critical thinking, okay, which one of these are actually realistic, which one might be in a listening, that's where you have to think a little bit, and add that to your notes. And you're predicting what you might hear in the exam. For these ones, I was thinking, if you're embarrassed, you might feel uncomfortable. You might have made a fool of yourself. You might feel ashamed. You might say, I never thought I'd live it down, meaning I never thought I'd get over it. That's a really nice expression for C1. If you're aware of, you realized, you noticed, it dawned on you, something struck you, the penny dropped, you put 2 and 2 together. I've got lots of expressions there, which means I was aware of something. If you're offended, you could be insulted, you could be rubbed up the wrong way, put out, irritated. Pleased, glad, satisfied. Chuffed, which is very British. Worried, you're on edge, something's eating you, you're concerned, you're uneasy, sort of overlapping with embarrassed there, but something slightly more anxious in the worried sense. If you're grateful, you're counting your blessings, something about being thankful, giving thanks, recognizing how lucky you were, then you're grateful. If you're happy, obviously you're delighted, you're positive, you're upbeat. That one's a very general one, so it's a bit easier, well, a bit more difficult. And if you're disgusted, something turned your stomach, something made your skin crawl, you lost your appetite, you felt revolted. These could be the kind of expressions you're expecting to hear. Of course, it could just be from the context you understand that they're disgusted as well. It could be more contextual. But I think it's really useful to prepare yourself for the listening, to get your mindset in the right place, to think what kind of words might I be hearing. So let's do this listening part 4. I will play the 5 speakers. You will answer the questions. As you know, speaker 1, 21, 26, speaker 2, 22, 27. Then you will check your answers, aiming to get 6 out of 10, 60%. Then we will explain why these are the answers. Go.
Speaker 1.
I'm not particularly keen on flying, so when I toured Australia with a friend, we ended up taking a lot of long-distance trains. To keep within our tight budget, we'd catch night trains at unearthly hours to avoid the expense of booking into hotels. So it was that we found ourselves dropping off to sleep at a station in the outback, waiting for the early morning train to Sydney. Obviously, I'd never have done it if I'd been travelling alone, because I'd have felt at risk, but it seemed a safe enough place, and very clean. Anyway, there wasn't much going on there, so at least it made the night go quickly.
Speaker 2. I was working on a global product launch for my company with reps attending from all over the world, so it had to run smoothly, quite stressful. Part of the event involved arranging corporate hospitality, and one option was having a foot massage. After all my hard work, I decided to have one too, and then dozed off in the chair halfway through. Luckily, they let me sleep while they finished the other guests. It should have been refreshing, but having slept sitting up, I woke up with a stiff neck, and the pain lasted several days. I must have been exhausted, though.
Speaker 3.
I was in a long-distance yacht race, a personal challenge for me. We'd sailed 9 days non-stop, all the time rushing around on deck, so as soon as we'd pulled into a harbour and moored up, we were so desperately tired that we got our heads down right there on deck for some sleep. Bliss. But we awoke later to the sight of a huge, smelly vessel moored up beside us, and we quickly realised to our horror that our sleeping bags were damp from exposure to salt spray. It said something about the state we were in, that we were mistaken for the crew of the ship next door.
Speaker 4.
I just finished university and had gone to visit some old friends. I remember one evening we went to see one of our favourite bands performing. I knew it'd be a long night of dancing and generally being on my feet, but for some reason I was already flagging soon after we arrived, so I thought I'd better take a rest. And I actually managed to fall asleep on top of one of the speakers. Goodness knows how. Anyway, I rather expected my friends would find it highly amusing, but in fact they were quite sniffy and a bit embarrassed. So I've decided they're just not my friends anymore.
Speaker 5.
My friends live out by quite a remote beach. Since we hadn't seen each other for ages, we sat on the sands and talked until late. Then we lit a fire, and as the last bus had already left and we were some distance from the nearest town, and no one could be bothered to move anyway, we just all fell asleep right there. The next morning they told me people living there often did that at weekends, so I felt good that I'd had the chance to join in. It made me wish I could do the same where I live. Not very likely in my cold, windblown town, though.
So speaker 1 said that they want to avoid expense, and at least it made the night go quickly. So we can see they are saving money, and they are grateful for how they passed the time because it made the night go quickly. Speaker 2 was having a foot massage and dozed off, woke up with a stiff neck. That's going to be the treatment and the physical discomfort. Speaker 3 was sailing for 9 days, which sounds like a lot of hard work. That's going to be B. And then there was a huge smelly vessel by them, so they were disgusted. It's smelly. Speaker 4 was resting before a night of dancing. That's preparation. And then the friends were sniffy, meaning like, nose looking down their nose. They were not happy with it. And they're not his friends anymore, so he was offended, C. And speaker 5, the last bus had left, so he didn't want to walk. And local people do this as well. So he's said, that's good. So he was happy to follow local customs. Okay, how did you do? Let me know. And let's do another one. This one is something I like to do sometimes in class. You can see this is the same format, but this is actually from my C2 class that I teach every week, because I sometimes think it's nice to drop in some C2 activities, especially if they're slightly more accessible. And if you're studying for a C1 exam, I think you should be able to try this. You might not get as good a score as on your C1 activities, but it's very interesting to see how you can do. And it's something a bit interesting, a bit motivating. So let's do the same thing. How they feel with regard to the news for these different words. What would indicate that they are embarrassed, uninterested, curious, and so on. For example, A, embarrassed, I wanted the ground to swallow me up. And here's what my kids came up with in the C2 class. They said, I wanted the ground to swallow me up. Something about your face being red might indicate you're embarrassed. If you're uninterested, you couldn't care less. It has no appeal. It's pointless. If you're curious, you're dying to know more or to find out more. Something piques your interest or grabs your attention. If you're disappointed, you're let down. You had high hopes. It didn't meet your expectations. It's a shame. It's a pity. If you're relieved, it's a weight off your shoulders. It turned out okay. Right, relief, very much contextual. Something you were worried about, then you didn't need to be worried about. If you're envious, this one's a tough one because in a C1, C2 exam, they're not going to say I was jealous. So this one is very contextual as well. What does envious mean? You want what's not yours. If only I could have that thing. If you're annoyed, maybe your blood's boiling, it's under your skin, it's a nuisance. And if you're amused, maybe you're chuckling, you're giggling, you're seeing the funny side of something. We have to appreciate the nuance here. It's maybe not like funny, hilarious, like laughing out loud. It's more amusing. It's more, isn't that amusing? Not so much comical. But anyway, you've had a little go at that. Let's try this exam. I will play the audio and then we will go through the answers. Insert audio.
Speaker 1.
Jack phoned and told me that apparently Helen had taken offence at something I said in the meeting last week. I thought she seemed a bit odd the last time I saw her, but she didn't say anything to me. Anyway, it seems that she thought it was so awful that she never wants to speak to me again. Well, to be honest, I couldn't care less. She's always falling out with people, and I can't be bothered even to think about it. I have no desire to spend any time with her if I can avoid it.
Speaker 2.
How did I find out? Well, he sent me an email saying that the whole thing was off. No explanation, no reason given, just the simple fact. Fortunately, I haven't lost any money on it because I hadn't got as far as spending any. I was still at the planning stage, but that isn't the point, really. I'd had it in the diary for ages. It was all fixed and I was looking forward to it. Oh well, never mind. There's no point getting cross about it, and I guess he'll tell me his reasons soon enough. But it's a real shame.
Speaker 3. Well, it was never about the money, because that wouldn't have been any different. It was always about the chance to branch out, do something different for a change. But it wasn't to be. I must say I was taken aback when I heard, because I'd been expecting to get it. I'd certainly been given the impression that it was mine if I wanted it. Well, I'd clearly been misinformed, and someone else got it instead of me, but maybe it's for the best. I was getting quite nervous about how I'd manage, and now I don't have to worry about that. I can just go on as before.
Speaker 4.
Michelle phoned me completely out of the blue, saying she was living in some very nice new place now, and asking if I'd like to use it while she was away. Well, funnily enough, I'd been planning to go over there anyway, so it was a very nice coincidence. She's always been very generous to me, and done me lots of favours like that over the years. I thanked her and said I'd take her up on it. I'll be very interested to see this new place, and there are lots of other things I'd like to find out too, such as what exactly she's doing now, and how she's come to be living there.
Speaker 5.
It's not every day you get the chance to go to something like that as someone's guest, so I was anxious to grab the opportunity. Apparently she gets to do that quite often because the company she works for has some kind of involvement in it. I hadn't realised that. I wish I was in that position. She gets to go to these things all the time, lucky her. Of course, I'll have to dress the part, but I imagine I can borrow something. I don't want to let myself down, do I?
And of course the answers were number 1, G, because it was about a woman that they weren't happy with at work, but he couldn't care less, or she couldn't care less. I don't remember when I listened to it in class. Couldn't care less, uninterested. My student got the phrase that was in the exam. That was really impressive. Speaker 2, it's off, meaning it's cancelled. But, and this is a shame. So it's off and it's a shame, it's a pity, disappointed. Speaker 3 was going for a job, wanted, but then didn't get it, talking about the application. And they were quite relieved in the end because they were so stressed about it that it's almost better not to get the job. Speaker 4, they were saying, I'm going to let you live where I'm staying. So we're talking about accommodation. And they wanted to find out more. They were curious to find out more. So they were curious. And Speaker 5, they were going somewhere. What were the clues for that? It was something about you need to dress the part and something about a guest. So we get the idea that it's an invitation. And they were envious. I wish I could do that in my job. So there we go. You have a mark out of 10 for a little C2 listening as well. I hope that was useful and enjoyable. And come back next week for more different parts of Cambridge exam focus. Thank you. Goodbye.